kind of a sparse group tonight, but I appreciate each of you for coming out.
Well, we never know if somebody else is going to show up.
We never know. And maybe they'll be late. It's kind of a rainy night. It's so easy to just say, I think I'll stay home and read tonight. Or
It's cold and rainy.
it is cold and rainy. But I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Thank you, friends, for coming. So I think everybody knows who I am, right? Do I need to go through introductions? I'd be happy to. My name is Brenda Pinnick, and I'm an oil painter. I paint mostly in plein air, sometimes in the studio on cold, rainy nights or in the heat of the summer. But as often as I can, I get outside. I've always been an artist. From the time I was very, very little, I knew that's what I was going to be. We had a set of encyclopedias, and book number 6, I think it was, those little orange encyclopedias, was all about art. And I spent many hours looking at Chagall's and thinking, how fun would that be, right? So off and on throughout my whole life, I've been involved in different creative jobs and, time off for raising kids and taking care of my dad. And, we do what we need to do. But I always found a way to keep creativity going in my life, whether it was painting or sewing or any other, jewelry design, whatever, a bunch of different things. I'm also the new president of the Booth Artists Guild, along with Mike Strickland, my co-president. And so anyway, I'm thrilled to be here tonight. I'm going to start off by talking about when I was in my mid-20s. My husband finished college, and we moved out to Oklahoma for his job from Michigan. Beautiful, beautiful Michigan with a lake and a pond every 5 miles and beautiful spruce trees and rolling hills and just a beautiful area. And then we landed in Oklahoma. And as excited as I was, it was kind of a shock because my oldest was in kindergarten. My little one was 3.5 and now going to preschool a couple afternoons a week. So I had a little bit of free time and a few tubes of paint. And I thought, oh boy. And I'd go out and I'd drive or walk. And I just thought, this is the ugliest place on the planet. There is nothing to paint here. And I spent, a good 3-4 years saying the same thing over and over to my husband. And I resorted to just setting up still lives and finding things, in the house to paint. But I really wanted to go outside and paint the landscape. And I just couldn't see it. And that's because I had not developed an eye for finding the painting. And that is what I'm going to talk about tonight, is the art of discovery and learning to find a painting no matter where you are. So I think what happens a lot of times when people are new painters, I'll say young painters, but I'm not referring to age, young painters, the temptation is to fall into the trap of finding that perfect painting, because our ego gets involved. We want people to love what we paint. We want to paint those mountains and the streams and the lakes and whatever is beautiful. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying to you tonight that that's the mindset that I had when I went out to Oklahoma as a young artist. I was frustrated. I was mad that I was in Oklahoma. And now that I've been painting for 14 years full-time, mostly as a plein air painter, I'm just astounded at what I could have been painting. When I think about it, of the beautiful scruffy bushes and the gentle rolls and just, the half dried up rivers. At the time I thought, that's just so ugly. And now I see it so differently. And I keep thinking at some point in my life, I probably should go back to Oklahoma and, go back to those spots and attempt the paintings that I didn't do when I was young. So that's what I'm going to talk about tonight, is finding those opportunities and learning to see them and how to maneuver into them to get a really interesting painting. I was also under the mistaken impression that everything had to be beautiful. And I've since learned that a painting can also just be interesting and be successful. It doesn't have to be pretty flowers, pretty sunset, pretty clouds. It can be dramatic. It can be all kinds of things. So if only I knew then what I know now. Famous last words. The painting that I have up right now that you see was one of the first plein air events that I attended, and it was down in Boston, Georgia, which is about 20 miles east of Thomasville, down by the Florida Panhandle, and beautiful area. And the plein air event was held in this little teeny tiny town. I mean, it was so little that literally you could set up your easel in the middle of Main Street and people would just go around you. They'd like wave, hey, I hope I'm not getting in your way. You know, that kind of place where it was just filled with interesting little spots. This one is the first one that I found when I walked around the corner from where we were meeting in the little office building right on Main Street. I thought, what am I going to paint? And I was kind of new at this. And I was walking, and that turquoise house caught me because turquoise always catches my eye. I love turquoise. And I looked at it for a few minutes, and I stepped back, and then I saw it. I saw my painting. And it wasn't about the turquoise house. It was about that space in between and that welcoming space that takes us back to a sunlit house in the distance on the next street over. And I've always loved this painting. I still own it. I keep saying I want to do it bigger and maybe make it a little more polished, but this was a plein air piece, so I've kept it as is. But it's always been one of my favorite paintings because it reminds me to always look for the unexpected and be open to new ideas and, look beyond the obvious, get beyond that obvious. So think for a minute about the time you spend and sometimes the money that you spend to find that perfect scene. So I've had the opportunity to go out west, a couple times. I've been overseas a couple times. But I can't do that all the time. That'd be fun, but reality is I can't do that. So we all want our art to be accepted and loved. As I've mentioned, we desire the accolades, the outward symbols of success, because that makes us feel good, and it makes us feel like we've spent our time, and that's our ego, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you only paint or draw what you know is going to be successful, I will guarantee you're not going to grow as an artist. You're not going to learn to see opportunities. So we have to learn to push ourselves to look for those opportunities. Some of us, we think, well, I'd like to sell my work because I'm spending all this money. I at least want to, get some money back so I can buy more paint and more brushes. And there's, that's a valid concern. But what I have found is I sell more paintings of things that aren't expected. I've got a couple of magnificent floral paintings that I'm still shocked that I still own them, but they're not as interesting. They're beautiful, but they're not as interesting. And I think that's probably what it is. So it is easy to get caught up in the trap of, well, what will people like? Well, we know people love mountains, they love streams, they love bears, they love this or that. Sometimes that may serve your purpose, but what about searching for a more creative approach? We're all creative beings, and we should use that creativity. And creativity it's a muscle. It's like any other muscle. If you don't use it, it's not going to grow. In fact, it may decrease. So, creativity. A personal voice can make your work recognizable, compelling, and deeply satisfying. And I truly believe that. We see people, now we have the internet, we're on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And think about the paintings that stop you in your tracks. Those are the ones that are like, what's different about it? What is it about that painting that keeps me coming back to look at it or holds my attention? Right. So this was the other morning. I live on a really sweet country road in Woodstock, Georgia, Hendon Road. Very, very sweet. And I also have a new camera phone. And my new phone is the iPhone 16 with the 3. Anyway, so I can zoom way in, right? So kind of kitty corner from where I live is a big field and then trees back there, and the people's houses are way, way back. You can't barely see them. Anyway, so I was trying out my new phone, and these trees were actually quite a ways back, but the way that light was hitting them was just spectacular. Now, I will admit, because I was walking my dog, and we had just started our walk, and typically our walk is about an hour, by the time I got back, that was gone. But I had a photo, and I had just seen it, so it was in my memory. And I stood. I knew I wasn't going to get back there to paint, and I knew it was going to be cloudy the next day or two, so I went back and I painted that right away in my studio, but I looked at it for a really long time. And I think what I like about this painting is it's one of those things that you see anywhere, right? This time of year, you're driving around. It feels familiar. It feels welcome. It feels like home, maybe. We've all seen this scene somewhere in our life, probably just yesterday or the day before. But what makes this a strong painting is the use of shapes. And so that's what I'm going to talk about, is when we are looking for something to paint, whether it's, from your photographs or on site or kind of a combination of both, learning to look at shapes as opposed to things will make all the difference in your work. Thinking about things that it's just a shape. And how do those shapes connect? And will that make a strong composition? So the slides I'm going to go through, I've dissected a selection of different artists' work, and we're going to look at how, after this one, this was one I did a couple weeks ago. I was over in Savannah at the Georgia Color Plein Air event. And there was so much going on at this little, this marina kind of. It wasn't really a marina. It was just, you've probably been there. It's, a fish joint and a bunch of stuff. You rent kayaks and all that. But what really drew me to this scene was those strong, like I saw all that as like one big shape, and then with the sky behind it. Now, the photograph that we're looking at, the camera exaggerated the sky. It wasn't that dark blue. And cameras do that. They exaggerate. I took that picture and I used my cropping tool in my phone to create my composition. And then I put the phone away. And then I painted what I saw. And what I saw was so much more light-filled than what you get with a photograph. It's pretty amazing. Finding a variety of shapes. This was also over in Savannah, and this was a little half-hour quick demo I did for a student that I met. She was my server at lunch, and we got to talking, and she said, well, part of my assignment is I'm supposed to interview an artist. I said, well, I'll eat lunch and then come on out. And so I set up, and I showed her how to go about finding the painting in a very busy scene. And so what I loved about this was, of course, the red umbrella, that's like, artist eye candy, right? But I love the different shapes. So I have all these dark rectangles that are the windows. I've got that curved ceiling, that interesting shape, and then the red triangle, wide triangle, and then the flat, and then the guy that came right at the very end and sat down and was looking at his phone. And I told her, I said, well, if I had planned this painting, I probably would have allowed more space at the bottom because I don't want my subject sitting on the bottom of my painting. But I went for it anyway because it gave me a really nice angle and a human interest. So I went ahead and put them in. And I gave her the painting. She was thrilled. So let's start with Lori Putnam. We all know who Lori Putnam is. Yeah, you might have heard of her. Pretty fantastic artist, lives up in Tennessee. And this is a recent piece she did. And I wanted to, break it apart. What is the dynamic of this painting? So it could be a painting of anything. If the shapes are strong and if it works as an abstract, then it's going to work. You can get away with all kinds of crimes of color, whatever else. If you've got that foundation, you're pretty much going to have a hit. And when I took this, I brought this photo into photo of her painting into Procreate. I dissected it, and I looked for the darkest darks. Now she doesn't go full blown darks very seldom, and if she does, it's just a little tiny bit. She's a high key painter, but for the purposes of dissecting this, I looked for the darkest darks, and I just, so that in my brain I could see how the puzzle pieces fit together, I went ahead and made that black. And then I looked for all the midtones, and then I looked for the lights. And this is what I came up with, and I absolutely love the abstract design of that, because as you see, we've got just a great variety of shapes. And there are different sizes. What I love is that black at the bottom, and then it comes up into that triangle. And then I love the tiny little triangles, small shapes within the white shape that actually is the building. And then the triangle, the house shape on the left, and then that dark at the edge of the mountains. And it helps me understand. So if I took that map, and if I laid in color, whatever color I wanted, and say I wanted to keep it an abstract, I could put all kinds of interesting brushwork in there, color temperature variation, and staying within that shape of a mid-tone. And it would still be a successful painting. And we might look at it and think, that's an abstract, but wait, that kind of looks like a house. Maybe that is a house. So I thought that was a really first good example to start with. Barbara Janicki used to live here in this area, over Roswell, Alpharetta area. Now she's out in Bend, Oregon. And when she still lived here, I went and took a few classes from her. I was still a young, had just come back to painting. And the thing that just, blowed me over was, she said, just look for 5 shapes. And she often just does 3 shapes. And this is one of her recent paintings. She works in both oils and pastels, master pastelist. Look her up, Barbara Janicki. And you're welcome to, take pictures of this as we go if you want to remember names. But what a strong composition that is. And it's just a simple wave. And it's not the whole ocean. It's not, the beach huts, the kids on the beach. It's just a beautiful close-up of a simple wave, and it's such a strong, dynamic painting. I could look at it for a long, long time. This is one of mine I did over in Virginia at a plein air event recently, and it was a very foggy morning. So the values are very, very tight. They're not exact, they're not 8, 9, 10, or 8, 9, or 2, 3. They're very mid-range, almost like when it's like that way, it's almost like you're in a greenhouse. And so I dissected it after I got home. This was a plein air, and then I did touch up a little bit of the flowers, the bush of flowers, when I got home. But I wanted to examine, the movement of the piece. So whenever you can, if you can connect all your darks, if you can find a way, and even if it's just visually connected. Where's my pointer? I don't remember how to do that. That's okay. You can see where the darks are almost connected at those 2 spots. they're visually connected. Our brain fills that in. So they don't have to be literally connected, but if they're going in the same direction, you can have a break in there. But that's what gives you a real strong movement in a piece.
Brenda, it's the button with the green line at the top.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, let me just use it just because I can. There. Thank you. Woohoo! Fun. Like I said, all I need is a cat, right? So, so you can see. Is this making sense to you? Are you seeing what I'm saying? Okay. Another one of Barbara's. Man, that's beautiful. Of course, she's a master colorist too. That helps. But it's just really essentially two shapes. Those whites, again, connected. Just basically two shapes. And what a beautiful, strong composition. So she probably stood there for a long time and took a lot of pictures and walked this way and this way. This is Jean Lagassic, and I love that. I mean, I think that is just wonderful because what happens is those mountains, they mass with the sky. Now, up on this screen, this looks pretty dark, right? I kept it light. It's lighter on my iPad and, when I pulled it off the internet. But this masses together, and then this, is the dark area. So you don't have to get, if you do this, and I really recommend you do this exercise, and you don't have to have Procreate. You can just use, just your eyes and just looking and use a pencil on your sketch pad, or you could use tracing paper if you wanted, and just find those darks. But what it does is it forces you to really think about, okay, well, wait a minute. Does that fall in the category? What category is that? Is that going to be a mid-tone? Is it going to be a light, or is it going to be dark? So if you think about the value scale, and I go from 1 being the lightest because it's less, and that makes sense to me. So if you think about 1, 2, 3 being your lights, 4, 5, 6 being your midtones, 7, 8, 9 being your darks. Think about that. So it may not be, okay, well, maybe you look at this and say, well, that's really like about a 6, or maybe it's, right on the edge. It forces you to decide, okay, how am I going to categorize this? Kim Eshelman, oh my gosh, she's been doing some amazing work. This is pastel. This one just knocked my socks off. And just part of it is her technique with that tree, but it's so strong and just almost like exploding. So that, man, I've got to do that one. I've got to look and see how she did that. So just going through this process is teaching my brain. It's training my brain to look for those shapes. This one I did up in Tennessee at the Plein Air Convention at a farm we went to, which now is no longer there, sadly. But you can see the movement. We come in here and we've got this path and we're going to go up here. We're going to dance around here a little bit and up and back around and look at that barn. So even doing this to analyze your own work is really helpful because you'll find ways that you can improve it. Anne Blair Brown, one of my favorites. Love her work because her work is just simplicity, but it reads so strong and it reads like, a real sense of place, like you're standing there because she gets those values right. And hers was very easy to dissect. She's very clear of her intent with her values. This is an older one I did, probably 8 years ago, 9 years ago. That little barn isn't there anymore. But I always loved that because it was one of the first times I really got my uprights the right value. I got them nice and dark, and it set off that beautiful old little barn. and then the way the light was coming across and hitting the face of the barn and lighting up those sunflowers. And I've always loved that little painting. But so I went back in and dissected it. It's like, yeah, I see the abstract, and here we have, three, the mid, the darks, and the lights. Feels very strong. You could do that in any color. You could do that pink and yellow and orange. And if you could still get down to the darks, you'd be okay. Shauna Coons, and she's a magnificent artist out in Utah. And I thought this was a really different one because it's got this patterning in it, right? But you see how it just keeps us moving. It almost feels like music to me looking at this. There's that rhythm. And it helped me see spaces between the trees, and we're going to talk about that when I demo. This is Dawn Whitelaw, also up in Tennessee, and she's done many workshops here. She's a real good friend of the booth, and she comes down and teaches workshops, and a magnificent teacher. She's taught in university for many years, and she is also very deliberate, like Anne is, very deliberate in her shapes. So you see this big shape. She's got all kinds of things going on there. She's got high chroma, low chroma, some movement through just some subtle lines, some movements in the grasses, but it still holds together as one shape. And then you see our eye, we just go, right to that lit area, and then a little bit of highlight up at the top of the mountains and then up into the sky again. And I want to point out too here that you'll notice on these breakdowns that there are no two shapes that are the same. In most instances, they're not even similar. So you have big shapes, medium shapes, smaller shapes, and even a line can be considered a shape because really, we got this kind of line going up here. So this line right here, where the highlight is, that becomes a shape as well. So it holds together. The whole painting holds together and makes sense. So once you determine your shapes, you can have all kinds of fun in there. This is Chula Boulevard. Oh my gosh. This painting I saw, and I gasped. I just like, oh my gosh. Because, she lives out there, and she could have been, she probably was standing in front of a massive, beautiful range of mountains and all these trees and rocks and all that, and a bag of chips. But she zoned in for a strong design. She just, there it is. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4 shapes. And each one is different. So we've got small, medium, bigger, and then bigger yet. And very interesting design. Just more of a geometric shape here, almost a rectangle here, and then this jagged edge of where the trees come out. Chula Beauregard. Here's an older one of mine, and it just sold, and I was just looking at it the other day, and I did this, probably 10 years ago, and there's a million things I would do different now, but maybe not a million, maybe 500,000. Whoops, what? It almost looks like a Pac-Man kind of thing. You see that? the square of the eye? It's like, that's weird when you break it down like that. So, but I wanted to break it down and show it to you. Like, okay, it does work. And I think part of it is because it's got this interest here, these up and down lines. And you can tell I spent a whole lot of time getting it just right. Just indicated, this is what's going on there. Where do the big shapes meet and connect? Visually, they connect here. It's said, people say if you if it were a sticker, if the black area were a sticker, and if you pulled it off, if it all came off as one piece, then that's very successful, something to strive for. Here's a photo I took. Oh yeah, I was over in Savannah a couple weeks ago, and I thought, okay, well, it's nice. It's very classic. It's got your stuff in there that people like, and so I broke it down just into a no-tan, just no-tan being black and white only. Now there are apps that will do that for you. However, when you mentally go through that process, then you understand it. You make those decisions. It's not an algorithm making those decisions for you, right? So you can change it. Well, one of the concerns with this design is this right here. These shapes are just as important as the dark shapes, the negative spaces. And here, they're so similar. You know, these trees are the same distance apart. The trees are about the same. So what can I do to make that better? Because I thought I can't make it work that way. So using the knowledge that I have, I took it and went to the next level. And I thought, you know what? I know these are trees, but really they're just a shape. That's all one shape right there. So I've got two shapes here. Took out that middle tree so that this negative space, and this are all different from each other. Very, very important. And then here I came in and added midtones, which actually looks really dark here for some reason, to see, okay, well, now what does that look like? So that's the process. So keep your eyes and mind open to unexpected opportunities. Learn to see shapes, not things. Let go of your expectations and be open to trying something vastly different from what you normally do. Consider scale, edges, shapes, color, and line instead of boat, tree, lake, person, dog. And you will advance your skills tremendously. This is an example of, I was teaching a workshop over on St. Simon's Island a few years ago, and I heard at everybody we were going, we parked our cars and we were going to walk over the little bridge to the beach, right? And I was going to paint the beach and find something over there. And as we walked across the bridge, I looked over to the right. Everybody stop. This is where we're going to be because this is what I saw, because I saw those shapes. And painted it there. Did a little tiny touch up at home. I added a little more of that yellow. And this one went on to win an award at the AIS show. So open to ideas. Going through a small town, traveling with my painting buddy, Keith. We were coming back from Boston, Georgia. Rode together and we said, let's get off the highway and go through this little town. Maybe we can grab a lunch, a sandwich. And we came upon this, I don't know what it was, like these old buildings that, you know, they haven't been touched in years, but it's like, look at those amazing shapes and colors and fun stuff. And is it a pretty painting? Not necessarily. I mean, I think it's kind of pretty painted, but it's not like pretty, you know? But I love this painting because visually I want to go in there and I want to explore and see what's in there, and it just takes me in, and just the shapes are also interesting. This one was done up in Tennessee at another plein air event, and there was this, it was actually an old plantation, now privately owned, of course, and two sculpture gardens just filled with sculpture, and this gorgeous house with porticos and all that. And just, I walked around, I felt overwhelmed. You know, just, oh my gosh, there's too many choices here, right? So I came around the corner and she was there, and the way the light was hitting her is what captured my attention. But I think what makes this painting really strong is that black shape, almost black, that's behind her that pushes her forward. Without that, it wouldn't have been a strong painting, I don't think. But you can see I had all kinds of fun staying within kind of all the same value. But because I was in the same value, I could change temperatures, I could change, hues, I could change my brushwork and just have a joyful experience within that little shape. And going back to that one, I've already talked about that, finding a scene with depth and interest. And I'm going to demo this. So I went into Procreate and did a little breakdown to say, okay, well, let's take a look at this. This is just looking out from my front porch, out my front yard. It kind of goes down and then back up to the road up there. And, oops, okay. So that's what I'm going to demo. And I think I can just set that down. And I'm just going to look at this. And as I work, I would love it if you would ask some questions. And Cherie has the microphone, or you can choose just to talk really loud, because we are recording this. And in the past, we found that people's questions don't get heard by the audience if they're watching on Zoom or if they watch it later. So either speak up very loudly or just raise your hand and holler for Cherie. I can't, the lights are right in my eyes, I can't see. So I'm working on oil primed linen, which is my preferred choice of substrate, because I can always get back to the white, because unlike cotton, linen, or the oil priming on the linen allows the color to sit on top of it as opposed to being absorbed into it. And I don't know how far I'm going to get on this, but I'm going to try and go fast, because there's certain things I want to talk about as I work. So I may not finish this painting tonight, but I'd rather you learn something, get my message across, as opposed to necessarily walk out with a finished painting, because I have lots of finished paintings in my basement. Don't ask me how many. So I'm a big advocate of painting a lot, painting fast and painting a lot. And then the ones that are good and strong, you can always go back and finish them out further. Because really, if you're a plein air painter, you know that generally speaking, if you're doing it in one pass, it's an abbreviated type of painting. So seldom do I ever just leave a painting untouched when it comes home. Generally, my experience, I usually have to touch up, clean up the sky area. Usually I end up with it getting way too dark, or it's muddy or something. So usually I'll go home and clean up the sky, and then maybe, anything else that needs tweaking, like especially if I put, a person in it or something, a lot of times there'll be some work that needs to happen there. So I always start with a transparent, warm tone, wet. And then my next step is, because now I have a mid-tone, so now I'm going to wipe out my lights. And can you all see? Are we good? Okay. I wonder if we should, Lindsay, put the camera on this. Would that help you guys, or? Okay, all right. So I'm going to have to turn around. So there we go. So I'm just going to start kind of wiping out. See, where's my center? My center's right there. I want to be careful of that. Usually, I'll put in my third marks. You put in what? My 1/3 marks. Give myself a little bit of a map. And I've done this so many times that I can just kind of eyeball it. So in design school, because I am a graphic designer, I'm a graduate of the Creative Circus in Atlanta, Georgia. And one of the things we learned about focal areas, if you're designing an ad for a magazine, this is God, this is your mom, this is your best friend, and this is your brother. So take that for what it's worth. Not an ad, so feel free to, do things around. But those are key points. Those are where the thirds intersect. And then we know by doing this, we don't want anything right in the center. So I know I've got this kind of big wide tree. He comes down about like this. I'm so afraid I'm going to drip this stuff on the carpet. I should have brought a drop cloth. But if I say whoops, just pretend you didn't hear me. Yeah. So here's where I have to be careful because, again, those negative shapes. So I want to make sure that, yikes. And this one leans a little bit more. This one should be a little more upright. And then this one is going to lean. So that's going to give us some difference. And then I know I'm going to have another one that's going to come right about like that. And then one near it. So again, I want to make sure that this distance isn't the same as that distance. So I'm going to bring it in. And then we also have to worry about, we want to make sure that none of the trunks are the same width. So many things to think about. Got to keep track of all that. Okay. So 1, 2. This one's got to be way bigger. But not as big as this one. See how it's like everything you do affects everything else. So if this were me not doing a demo and doing it, either on site or in my studio, I would spend a whole lot of time getting this exactly right. So now I've got this space between this big tree and this little one. Lindsay, do you want to go back and put up the image again so they can see? Maybe we can kind of do a little back and forth. Oh, you can? Oh, there it is. God, she's so good. She's so good. All right. So I want to do a little check. So I'm going to do a little measurement. Okay, we're good there. That's feeling quite similar, isn't it, right there? But down here, it's coming over. So I think we're going to be okay. Maybe what I'll do is, I think I'm going to bring it over just a little bit. And I want to lean this one in a little bit more too. I'm still just using transparent. I think I've got like an oxide and maybe a little transparent yellow in there, possibly. And then it's really important to step back quite often from your work. It's leaning a little too much. We don't want it to feel uncomfortable, like, it's going to fall any minute. Okay, I think I'll start with that. Yeah. All right. And I'm still sticking with my warm neutrals. And I think it's just so beautiful when you have a warm neutral base and then you put cool colors on top of it, there's a vibration that is just, it's just beautiful. I want to make sure that this, where that kind of ridge is, I don't want it necessarily straight. I want it to feel a little, somewhat organic. So I'm just going to do a little bit of this kind of stuff, and we'll refine that more later. I need someone to keep time for me to tell me how I'm doing time-wise.
10 till 7.
Okay, good. We're okay. Thank you. And then there's this dark little tree back behind here. Let's go ahead and get that guy in, because I can easily forget that. He's just kind of hiding back there. And then we've got, so this one actually comes all the way forward. I love that. That's nice. And then the dark kind of starts happening here. And here. And I'm putting that paint on really thin, just kind of scrubbing it in, because I am going to go on top of it. Let's go ahead and make this guy really skinny and a little bit different. Change things up a little bit.
So is this the way you start?
It is.
Your plein air paintings?
It is. It certainly is. We've got a nice big dark shape here. And especially if it's, if I know I've got a good 3 hours, I'll go ahead and do like a little mini sketch in my sketchbook and mine aren't fancy, like I wouldn't even show them to you because it's just for my, reference. Oh yeah, this is going to be my darkest dark. Here's my midtones, and here's where I want, my focal area to be. You know what? Let's go ahead and take him. He is leaning that way a little bit. So I'm concerned because I have that distance and that distance is the same. So what can I do there? I can add another tree because I'm the boss. I'm the boss. And it can just be the suggestion of a tree, but it's enough. No, no. I'll still do it, but it was too. Let's do it like right in here. Something like that. That's better. Yeah. I like it. And you can tell I take really good care of my brushes. My friend Keith saw me painting like that. He goes, "How many brushes do you go through?" It's like, well, you do what you got to do to get the effect that you want. And if that means that, I'm going to buy more brushes in order to make nice paintings that I can sell, then that's what I have to do. And I also sometimes buy really cheap brushes. Because I'm hard on them. And back here. Okay, so we have shape here. This comes down. Painting is hard. But it's fun. And this is why I am not a watercolorist, because I like to be able to change my mind. I don't like necessarily to be a planner. And like Miss Jill here, sitting up in the front row, does these beautiful watercolor paintings. And she's going to come and do a program for us next year. With all her beautiful work from out west. Okay. Okay, that's enough goofing off. I got to get serious here. Okay. Step back. Now my next step is I'm going to put in some really darks. Darks. Need more paint on my brush. And I'm just picking up some of my burnt umber and some ultramarine. And applying the paint sideways gives us nice soft edges on those trees so they're not sharp, because trees don't have sharp edges. I love it that this one comes off top and bottom. And I do feel like I need to make him a little bit wider. So I begin all my paintings painting as though I am painting in plein air. So an abbreviated, I don't spend time with any detail. If I decide to take the painting to more of a gallery finished level, I can do that later. But without this strong foundation and getting this portion of it right, why spend time on detail if you're not positive that the structure of the painting is going to work? All right. This is all kind of one big shape. I don't want to put too much brown in here because I do want to come on top of this with some nice, cool greens. But if you have that warm underneath tone, it's going to make it really beautiful because there are warm tones. And then this guy gets dark up here. And this is why I love oil primed linen. I can just wipe that right off. Can't do that with watercolor. Make a mistake, there's no such thing.
Sometimes mistakes are wonderful.
That's true. That's right. And sometimes I leave mistakes. I'll accidentally dip into the wrong color and put it on. It's like, oh, wow, it needed that. So I don't know if it was really a mistake or an intuitive kind of thing that happened, I think it's feeling like it's got a nice rhythm. And I feel like I want to make this change and kind of make this a little bit of a hill here going this way, which makes it a little more lyrical. It's one of those common words. I used to work for Hallmark Cards designing, and it's one of those happy words. Make it more lyrical. But there's a lot to be said for that. Makes it comfortable and a little friendlier. And then we've got this back area. It's kind of coming like this. Do a little bit of a dip down like that. I need to stand back. Yeah. All right. I want to wipe up some of this brown that I've got. I'm working on a toned piece of glass that is, it's spray painted neutral gray behind it, so that as I'm mixing, I can judge my values against it. And when you learn to do that, it's going to keep you out of all kinds of trouble. Oh, I just know I'm going to drip on this floor. Okay. So, what really drew me to this scene, besides the patterning, is that beautiful, like, what color is that? It's kind of a teal, but it's got some purple in it. Just love that. I'm always drawn to those colors. So that's where I'm going to begin, because there's a lot of that. And then everything else will play off from that. We're not seeing any sky. Let's see what color that is I put out there. Oh, okay. I put out, I couldn't remember. I put out Viridian Hue, which I really like. I learned that from Matt Smith, because it's not as strong as regular Viridian. And if you put a little bit of it in with white, it makes a beautiful sky color. Like, who'd have thought? I wouldn't have thought to do that, but that's what he uses. All right, so it does have some white in it. Oh man, that is so pretty. Because I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down that pure color first, and then I'll come back on top and selectively add a little bit of the shadow colors, which we're actually seeing have some violet in it. But I want to use some broken color, so I'm not going to mix that color here. I want it more interesting than that. So here goes. Let's see if that's going to be right. It's really dark. Looking at it on my palette, it's about a 5. So because that is shadow, it's going to be more like a 6 or even a 7. And right now it feels pretty dark because this is kind of light, but I'm going to go ahead and put it on. And if I need to come back and lighten it, I can do that. A little bit more white, just to see more color in it. Yep, that's better. And I use long flats almost all the time. I can do just about anything with a long flat brush. So I'm just going to mix a little more paint up. I didn't make enough. It's a little too light. It's shadow. It's got to be darker. Greener. And I enjoy leaving bits of the warm showing in my work. I just feel like it makes a nice vibration. Are there any questions while I'm laying this color on? I love these little clip-on lights. These are by Ottlight, Dick Blick. They're very handy. Because sometimes, even if you're painting out, even if it's not a nocturne, you're maybe in the the shade, the shadow of a tree or something, and they're just very helpful.
Are they battery operated or are they?
They're rechargeable. Yeah. Yep. So I'm staying within the same value, but I'm changing my hue. I've added some green, and I had put out just a. What color was that? It's by Gamblin. It's blanking. I'll think of it in a minute. I'll tell you. But you see, I'm still staying within that same value, but there's a temperature shift. Now, I will go back in. I'm just laying in the groundwork right now, and we will come back in later and adjust. Do you all watch Ian Roberts?
Yes.
He's so good. Really good person to watch for shapes. Really, he does brilliant 10-minute instructional videos on YouTube. They're free. He does have a subscription kind of situation as well, but it's just the right amount of time, and I love the way he delivers his presentation. Oh,
We're going to put some on the floor.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. You know what? We'll get one to have. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so those leaves on the trees, the ones that are in light, are very cool. And the green that I just put down is a very warm green. So I'm going to go back to my Viridian. And put a little tiny bit of Cad Red light in just to, so it's not so much. So I really enjoy using brushes in a way that exploits what they can do. My father was a sign painter, and I learned to use lettering brushes when I was young. And there's all kinds of magic, little tricks you can do with brushes. And that's what I recommend people do at the end of a painting session. You get to that point when, okay, so you've been working a couple hours, you're in your studio, and maybe you're not sure you're done with the painting, but yeah, I should stop before I ruin it, right? We've all been there. But, I have 20 minutes till I have to go downstairs and make dinner, right? So that's like what I call the danger zone. Because you got paint, your brushes are already dirty, you're in no hurry to start dinner, or, maybe he'll start it if I don't get up there. That's probably more the way it goes. But that's the danger zone, because that's when you get in there and you start messing with stuff. So what you can do instead is use up that leftover paint, and even on a piece of glass with something behind it dark, practice brush work. Practice, load your brush up. Practice making a circle or, a straight edge with the edge. See what you can do with those brushes, and it's a really good opportunity. How am I doing? Time? 7:05. Okay. I'll get far enough that this will feel, pretty well blocked in. And okay, so we've got our cools. Now I want to look at the warms. So we've got these red violets, that pine straw that we all love. I always feel like when I post my Georgia paintings online, I always feel like I need to tell the rest of the world, yeah, our dirt is red. It wasn't a mistake. That wasn't, me being goofy. That's, that's our dirt. That's our life. That's what we deal with. So I'm gonna, ooh, man, that went pink really fast. Yikes. Not what I wanted. I love dioxazine purple with reds. In with transparent red oxide, sorry. Okay, so that's about a 5. Let's see what that looks like. I feel like it's a little too, well, let's just go ahead. Let's do this. Let's put this on. Let that stay violet. Let some of that orange show because, Georgia. And at this point, this is usually, where you start giving the painting what it needs, not what necessarily is in front of you. What does this painting need? What's going to make it more interesting? And I even kind of like just that orange underpainting showing, right? It's interesting. That one's got to go darker. I'm not sure I'm seeing color accurately in here with these lights. So there's probably going to be some garish. But that's okay. As long as the values are working, I'm okay with that for now. Use Viva paper towels always. So I like pulling colors here and there and everywhere. Taking some of that violet, putting it up in the foliage. Let's pull this one forward a little bit so we get a little bit more of a dance. Okay. Are you all bored? Are you okay? Doing okay? Nobody's snoring. Thank you for that. It's like my worst nightmare, right? Oh no, they're going to be, because literally, like, I love learning and I buy videos. 10 minutes in, I'm asleep. Like, there's something about it. I don't know if anybody else experiences that. And so I try to like drink my coffee in the morning and that's when I watch them, like when I'm all jacked up, Oh, it's just awful. Okay, so. All right, let's mix up a pretty color for the trees and get that in for the trunks. That's too light. And it's kind of a, like, what color is that? Kind of a pinkish, orangish, purplish, something or other. Along the edges. Oh, that's awful. Oof. Awful. Sometimes you mix a color and it looks so pretty on your palette. Like, oh man, I'm so in love with that. It's like so wrong. So wrong. Not what we want at all. But we want to break this up. want to make sure that's wider at the bottom. A little bit of warmth up in there. Just moving these colors around a little bit. Okay. I'm going in. And it's funny, these types of colors are the ones that, man, you can spend so much time mixing, thinking, okay, that's got to be it. That's got to be right. And it isn't. Like, to me, right now, looking down on my palette, this looks really chromatic. And it's basically taupe up there. So, adding more and more white. Let's just see what happens. Want a little more exciting than that, so I'm going to pull in some cat orange. Okay. I'm not using any medium. This is one of those really cheap brushes.
Do you typically use medium?
I don't.
What did she ask?
Yeah, I asked if she typically uses medium.
Okay.
I don't. So we want some variety, so I'm going to pull, this one's going to be a little bit lighter. I pulled a little more yellow into it, but man, I put it up there and I'm not seeing that yellow hardly at all. You know, they are uprights, so unless that sun is shining sideways on them, we don't want them too light. And so now I want to snazz them up a little bit. Add some variety. I'm telling you, I just can't believe how chromatic that looks on my palette. And then, but it's, these lights tend to, they're a little cool, so I have to keep that in mind. So they're deadening this warm. So that's the thing with painting outdoors as well. It takes a long time to judge your color, because if the light is shining down, this is a flat surface, so you're getting full light. If this is an upright, it's not receiving as much light. So you have to adjust for that. So try to use an umbrella or stand in a shady area, so both have the same amount of light on them. And even then, this is still going to get more light. So you have to kind of watch out for that. Man, this tree is wonky. Wonky, wonky, wonky. And okay, so I feel like the values are reading right. That turquoise is very, very chromatic. But like I said, I'm going to come back in. I want to put a little violet on top of it. I'm going to mix up a kind of a dull violet. Not real dull, but it's going to bring that whole thing down to a certain level.
Question.
Yep.
Can you say more about what you mean when you say chromatic?
Yeah. So colors right out of the tube, especially, the natural colors, cadmiums, are very, very strongly colored, right? Lots of chroma in them. The synthetic colors, like phthalo blue, they're deadly chromatic. If you get a spot on you, your great-grandchildren will be born with a birthmark. I'm pretty sure. pretty sure that's true. Yeah, but you don't really see the chroma until you add a little bit of white. It has to be activated with white. Those synthetic colors all have to be activated with white. But you can see like highly chromatic. So yellow, to bring it down, we use its complement, which is violet, or you could use a blue. Anything you do is going to bring it down. Anything you add to that pure color is going to bring it down somewhat. All right. Let's just see what happens here. Yeah.
It is 7:18.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to stop here pretty quick. And if you need to leave, don't be embarrassed to get up and walk out. I won't take it personally, but sure you get their name. All right, that helped a lot. Bringing that down. So we want to get some of this violets up in these shadows. That's a little too light. Come on. But that's what painting is. It's back and forth. It's constantly back and forth, right? You put something on, then that changes everything else. Now you've got to change this or that. And tree trunks, as they go up, they're going to receive more skylight. So they're going to get lighter, and they're going to collect more of that blue sky. If it's not in the light, the shadows are going to get bluer. Whereas if it's closer to the ground, those shadows are going to be warmer. See how I like that? So much better. Letting some of that brown show through. I really am a colorist at heart. I mean, that's why I paint, is because I love color so much. So when I first came back to painting, I had to really rein myself in, because it's like, oh, color, color, color. I used to design product for the crafting industry. I designed scrapbook kits and fabric and things like that. And I got to use, just glorious color, like in-your-face color. And so I had to really, rein myself in when I started painting. And if you look back on my, like on Instagram, you'll see that. And I should probably go home and erase all that stuff. All right. Now I'm going to put a little bit of highlight on the leaves, and then I'm going to stop and I'm going to show you a couple paintings that I brought with me, just to show some examples that didn't get put in the slideshow. So I'm going to use, I put out cadmium yellow light. That's kind of my go-to yellow. It seems to go either way easily. And put a little tiny bit of, there we go. I want to make sure that's pretty bright. Pretty chromatic.
Brenda, could you give us what's on your palette in terms of your colors?
Sure. So before I tell you, I'm going to explain something to you. That nights before I leave for my painting trips, I lay there in bed and I have little panic attacks thinking, did I pack both reds? Do I need more reds? I probably need more reds. I probably need some rose. I probably need this, or I probably need that. First thing, I have my car all packed, and the first thing in the morning, I go downstairs to the studio, and I come back up with another, 20 tubes of paint. And my friends make fun of me, but, when they say, oh, I forgot my, who has it? I do. And they're always glad. So I make no apologies for it. So with that said, I did put out a lot of paint colors tonight because, I didn't know what I was going to, really for sure what I was going to do. I left it option open for myself to change my mind and do a different demo. But I have, a lot of times especially when I'm plein air painting, I will mix a fast drying white with a regular white. And it just dries faster that way. And it makes traveling a little easier. If I'm trying to come home with, 12 paintings or whatever, they dry faster.
The titanium white?
Titanium white. Zinc white will crack. You can buy some whites that are a mix of titanium and zinc. Utrecht white, it's called Utrecht white, at the Dick Blick store is a mix. It has a little bit of zinc in it. When that is convenient is for skies, because the titanium white, the molecules in it are so fine that it's extremely opaque. So it's hard to get a highly chromatic sky with, say, if you're mixing titanium white with, say, ultramarine blue or one of those. So sometimes it's nice to have a white that's a little more transparent. And they do sell a transparent white. I've never bought that. But I mix titanium white with fast drying titanium white by Gamlin. Cad yellow light, Indian yellow, always on my palette. Never leave home without it. Cad orange, sometimes I put it out, sometimes I don't. Cad red light, I've got a cad red medium. Generally, I don't even bother with cad red medium. I've got, for my cooler red, I don't use alizarin anymore. I use a magenta, which is a transparent color, and it's just cleaner and it's more stable than alizarin. Dioxaning purple, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, viridian, and then on my left of my palette is where I put my earth colors. So transparent red oxide always, sometimes a transparent yellow oxide, a burnt umber, and then I've got a transparent brown oxide. Sometimes I like that, just I really like using transparent colors. And then a lot of times I'll squeeze out a neutral gray because it's a very quick way to tone something down. And if sometimes you just need to gray something down in a hurry, because when you're out playing or painting, you want to do what's fast. You don't have a lot of time. And then also you can compare colors to that to see how close you are to a mid-tone gray. So sometimes it's just nice. I'll put a little bit of that in there, that green. You see, it just brought it down just enough.
So what gray is it?
It's I think that's Gamlin, or it might be Winsor Newton. I think they both have them, and they just have the grays. If you look on the, on the sheet, and it'll say like mid-tone or level 5. It's just very handy. And I really prefer implied realism. I don't like things. I mean, I appreciate it when other people do it. I'm not saying I don't like your work if you paint in realism. I just don't, that's not how I want to paint. I don't know. We all have our thing, right? Thank goodness. Thank goodness we're not all the same. Because that would be just way too boring. And maybe just a little touch of it here and there. And yeah, this is one of those really cheap brushes. You can see it's all getting all smashed up. That's all right. So edges, I want to make sure that this is kind of in the distance. I want to, make a little bit of a feeling of, oh, that's different than that. So sometimes if you just come along the edge and hit that edge with a little bit of light, that's really kind of what you need. And there's some, some grasses in here, scruffy. Who knows what that is? Probably poison ivy. Now I want to, just real quick, one more little thing, and then I'm going to stop, I promise. I want to put a little bit of highlights on that grass back in here. And it's still a turquoisey color, but it's quite a bit lighter. So this is going to make it more interesting. Could even be a little bit lighter than that. Oh, that's a mess. The feeling of it coming forward maybe a little bit. Now it's starting to feel like something. So, well, thank you. So it's not a finished painting, but I was able to get enough of what I wanted to talk about. So, will I finish this at home? I don't know. We'll see. I'll look at it in the light of day, right? Thank you. Thank you very much. So I brought a couple of little things I wanted to show. Examples of, this is, these are like a pin drop of what I have in my basement. Trust me. So this is a painting I did way long ago. And please give me like the credit I deserve for bringing my old work in because this is really brave, right? So I was looking at it the other day. I don't even remember where this was. And I was going to paint over it. I was going to sand it down and paint over. And I thought, you know what? It's kind of fun. So I started playing around. Well, what if I crop this? Because this is just a piece of gator board with, I glued the canvas onto it, the linen onto it. And so I started playing around with it. And now I like it. So I'm going to keep this. I'm going to have my husband, on his saw, cut that down for me. Or I can use a knife. And I'm going to see if I can rescue this one. So don't be afraid to do that. Oftentimes, those make the best paintings. Going back to like looking for opportunities that you would normally just like not, other people wouldn't even look twice at them. But I loved the shapes in this. And this was done up in Tennessee at On Track Studios. If you've ever been there, you would recognize that little building out back. And it was just about those shapes and that one little chair. And I love the lines. And you can tell this is like so quickly done. This was just like a 20-minute, whatever. But it was just capturing it. So it gives me enough information that if I want to do a larger painting, I've got that information and I can keep that fresh feel. So I don't look at plein air paintings as trying to make finished paintings, although when that does happen, occasionally, it is nice, but more often than not, it doesn't happen. But they are, they're sketches, they're studies, and I hang on to them because not all of them, some of them I paint over, but the ones that I do keep, there's generally like one thing about it that I want to remember or refer back to, and maybe it's like, man, horrible design, great color, So I'm going to hang on to that because there's something that happened with that color that I really, really love, and I want to remember that and perhaps use it somewhere else. And, there's all kinds of reasons to hang on to things. And this was from New Mexico, and I went out, I filmed a PBS little series with them. And I was driving in my little rent car, and this was just on the side of the road, and it just like, oh, look at that. And I couldn't stop and paint because I didn't have, I was in a rent car and I was dressed up and all that. But I came home and painted that. But I loved just the simplicity of that scene and just this nice big shape and the texture of it with this old house that we could see through. There was something that just felt kind of magical about it. This is walking up my pretty little country road. One evening, the sun sets. This is west is that way. This is facing east, and that late afternoon sun was. And this is just their barn and their little shed and all that. But there was just something almost like storybook about this feeling. I didn't paint this one on site. I came home and painted it again because that time of day. Things change so quickly that, yeah, I brought these, I wanted to show these. So looking for opportunities of fun things to paint. Sometimes I paint just to entertain myself because it's either that or clean house.
No one wants to do that.
No one wants to do that. So a lot of towns, including my little town of Woodstock, have scarecrow parades. And so every year I go, I didn't make it up this year, but every year prior, I go up and I paint scarecrows. And I love this guy. And he just like, it's like those blow up things that do this, you know? Every time I go past one, I laugh. It's like you've never seen that before, right? But I just was cracking up. I just thought he was so funny. And I got a couple more of those. Yeah, they were just great fun. Maybe I didn't bring them after all. Oh, I did. Yeah, so, you know, the bride and groom, just fun stuff. And it's not a finished painting, but it's a sketch. And then these, and even though there was a road there and other stuff, but they just all looked like they were all pointing their fingers and talking about people. Oh, that's just so fun. So that was just, you know, me entertaining myself with my toys, right? And a dancer, a scarecrow dancer with her pretty colorful skirt, and bad design, but just I had fun. So I wanted to end with that, you know, use your art for yourself too. Don't, you know, let go of what anybody else says, what anybody else cares. Sometimes you just want to do something just for yourself because it gives you joy. And you know, what a wonderful thing that we can do that. It's like musicians, sometimes they just play for themselves, or singers, and you know, there's things, sometimes my husband just does math because, you know, he loves that. So we all have our thing, we all have our joy. So remember to have fun in your work, and don't be afraid to try new things. And with that, I end and open up to any last questions. Come on, someone. I mean,
Palma, by the way. Hi.
where are you?
Up at the top.
Oh, hi, Palma. You mean water-based oils?
So you use
Yeah.
water instead of turf.
Yeah. How you liking them?
I'm learning.
Yeah.
I think that would be a good program for us to get somebody out here
Mm-hmm.
from the Windsor Newton who can give us some real good background on how these things work, and how we can seal them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would challenge you to look at one and see if you can tell the difference between
Yeah.
the turf-based and the water-based.
There's also a product called W. It's by Windsor Newton, and it's an additive that you can add to your oil paints that make them water miscible. So that's an option. It's a little pricey. It's like $20 over a little jar, but you know, so it's just that ingredient. So yeah, good. Hi, Palma.
Freedom from, you know, being able
Sure.
to just take them anywhere.
Sure, but you know, I spill water too, so you know. But anything else? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate you, and I hope you got something out of it. All right. Thank you. Thank you. You. I'll post it. I will. Yeah. Yeah.